Greetings, duelists, and welcome to another video. As you can see here, there are two monsters that you see here on the board. You see Fear from the Dark, and you see Despair from the Dark. The reason I'm showing you these two monsters specifically is because we just got revealed a new archetype, and these monsters actually make a cameo in this archetype. That's not to say that these monsters actually have a very specific or special role in this archetype. However, I felt it was very nice and convenient to just show these two cards because one of them has that monster in their artwork, which is this one. But we'll get to that in a moment. Uh, Infinite Forbidden, which is the next main booster set, right after Legacy of Destruction, uh, has revealed our first new flagship archetype outside of the recurring Exodia support and more support from Shining Sarcophagus, which is the theme that Yugi played at the very end of the Duelist era. And that archetype is called Fiendsmith. So, uh, Fiendsmith is an archetype that revolves around this one monster right here, called the Fiendsmith. And this card reads: you can discard this card, add one Fiendsmith spell or trap from your deck to your hand. Then you can target one Fiendsmith equipped card you control, and one monster on the field. Send it to the graveyard. Discarding itself to add a spell trap is the hand effect, while sending an equip is the field effect. We'll get to that in a moment. If this card is in your graveyard, you can shuffle one other Light Fiend monster from your graveyard into the deck or extra deck. Special summon this card. Before people get confused, despite the text saying shuffle, it just returns the light monster back to the extra deck. It does not shuffle your extra deck. I know people have been mistaken with that ruling in the past when it came to like stuff like tier elements. Just to give an example, or the Planet Perlorino, which is their in-themed field spell. So I wanted to clarify on that very quick. You can only use each effect once per turn. So in order to give you extra value to this card, we need to talk about the spell and traps, and then we have to talk about the extra deck. But right off the bat, basically this card is a searcher. This card can special summon itself from the graveyard, and this card can be spot removal for cards on your opponent's side of the field. So right off the bat, this is already really good. With cards in the game like Summon Limit being very popular, this is a card that can out the Summon Limit by itself. Because you essentially can get to one summon just for this card, and you'll see what I mean by that. Now that we talked about the Fiendsmith, let's talk about their spell and traps. They have a quick play spell, a normal spell, and a normal trap. I'll go with the normal spell first. This is one of the more important ones. This card is called Fiendsmith Tractus, and it reads: add one light fiend monster from your deck to your hand, then discard one card. You can banish this card from your graveyard, fusion summon one Fiendsmith fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as material. You can only use each effect once per turn. So right off the bat, we already know the Fiendsmith is a fusion archetype. This card is a searcher and is a fusion spell, which is actually very strong. Also, having a discard as part of the effect is a really big deal because we do have light fiend archetypes that benefit out of being discarded. One example right here is Fabled. But we'll talk about that once we get to the other cards later. So essentially what you can do is you can discard the Fiendsmith. Fiendsmith can add you Tractus. Tractus can add you a Light Fiend. You can discard that same Light Fiend for Tractus. And then what you can do is use Fiendsmith's effect, put the light fiend back into your graveyard, and you already have this monster on board. But how are you getting to the equipped cards for Fiendsmith? What cards do we need in order to get there? Well, let's keep reading the rest of the cards and then we'll get there. So this one is called Fiendsmith Sanctus. This is essentially just like a 1-card passcode. I think that's the name of the card, the token generator, or Sky Striker Hornet drones. Those are like the 2 main examples I can give for this card. Basically, it's a token generator. The only restriction that you have is that you can only attack with fiend monsters. And you cannot control monsters, or you can only control light fiend monsters in order to activate this card. This card is really good. You'll see in a second why. And then we have Fiendsmith in Paradisium. This is a normal track card, and this reads: target 1 level 7 or higher light fiend monster you control. Send all cards on the field to the graveyard except that monster. If your opponent special summons a monster while this card is in your graveyard, you can banish this card. Send 1 Fiendsmith monster from your deck or extra deck to your graveyard. Really strong card. This is basically a board wipe that does not destroy or target. So it bypasses magic specters. It bypasses the voiceless voice protection. It bypasses a lot of things, and having the ability of just sending a Fiendsmith monster from your deck or your extra to your graveyard can be beneficial for this card, especially since you can use those light fiends, because at this point we should assume the rest of the Fiendsmiths are light fiends by now. You can just shuffle them back to just resummon Lightsmith. Now that we talked about all the main deck cards, let's go with the extra deck. You already saw the Fear from the Dark is part of one of them, but they have 2 Link monsters and they have 2 Fusion monsters. And you're seeing a very messed up extra deck. I will get to it in a moment. Let's start with the Link one. So this is Fiendsmith Requiem. And this card reads 1 Light Fiend monster as material. So that part is a very big deal. This basically means that all your fabled monsters, all light fiend monsters in general, not just Fiendsmith, can make this card. And that's pretty scary, because depending on the rest of the effect, that means an entire deck can become a starter for the Fiendsmith like strategy. Okay, so let's keep going. During your main phase, quick effect, you can tribute this card, special summon 1 Fiendsmith monsters from your hand or deck. So as of right now, you can tribute this card, and this card can get you to Fiendsmith. You can target 1 non-link light fiend monster you control, equip this card from your field or graveyard to that target as an equip spell, and give it 600 attack. So now we know how the Fiendsmith is equipping, and now we know how the Fiendsmith it becomes spot removal. And this is fairly easy to do, because this is just a Link 1, and is pretty much generic for light fiend monsters. And you do have a token generator that can make this card. And you have a Fiendsmith that can actually search you for Sanctus, meaning that Fiendsmith itself is a 1-card starter for all of this. Let's read Sequentia. So Sequentia, as you can see from the artwork, is basically Fear from the Dark, surrounded by the Sanctus. So this requires 2 monsters, including a light fiend monster. And it says, during your main phase, you can fusion summon 1 fiend fusion monster from your extra deck by shuffling materials mentioned from your graveyard into the deck. You can target one non-link life fiend monster you control, equip this card from your field or graveyard to that target as an equip spell with this effect. Your opponent cannot target the equipped monster with card effects. You can only use each effect of Sequentia once per turn. Really strong link too. It's very, very important to note that it says that this can fusion summon one fusion monster from your set. It does not specify light fiend monsters, and it does not specify fiendsmiths. We'll get to that a little bit later on, but this card is really, really powerful. It's really strong for a link too, and depending on what the fusions already do, we're already looking at something very scary. Let's start with Lacrimosa. So Lacrimosa is a level 6 Light Fiend Fusion monster. It requires 2 Light Fiends, and it reads, monster your opponent controls lose 600 attack. If this card is fusion summoned, you can target one Light Fiend monster in your graveyard or banishment, which is another really big deal. Either add it to your hand or special summon it. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can shuffle one other Light Fiend monster in your graveyard into the deck or extra deck, inflict 1200 life points to your opponent. You can only use each effect of Fiendsmith Lacrimosa once per turn. So basically, this card is a stepping stone. You can basically link climb with this card. You can do a lot of shenanigans. It can bring back any Light Fiend, so this immediately already has synergy with Fabled. Because Fabled does have level 6 monsters, which means you can make rank 6s. They do have tuner monsters, so you can make synchros. And there's nothing restricting you from just keep link climbing with this deck. So you can essentially go Requiem into Sequentia, summon Lacrimosa special summon something, and then Lacrimosa into a link 3 or 4. And there are no restrictions with this archetype. There's nothing like Unchained where it hard lock you into fiend monsters. The only real restriction we have right now is not being able to attack except with fiend monsters. So this is already really scary. There is like potential for being abused with this engine. Imagine you mixing this with cross cheap and just like vomiting a lot of link monsters. Okay, so let's go with the other fusion monster. This one is Dicey, and this one reads, you can the materials are 1 Fiendsmith and 2 Light Fiend monsters, 2+ Light Fiend monsters, which is very easy to do because of Sequentia. Quick effect, you can negate the effects of a number of face-up cards on the field up to the total link ratings on link monsters equipped to this card as equipped cards. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can shuffle one other Light Fiend monster from your graveyard to your deck or extra deck, then target one card on the field, send it to the graveyard. So this card is really good. Basically, this card can serve either as an interruption for any card, or B as a board breaking card. And that's a really big deal. Let's say, for example, you're facing against like Voiceless Voice, and like you have to deal with like the full board that they have. You can summon this guy. You can use this card to try to negate like the cards already face up on the field. If this card is destroyed or this card is sent to the graveyard, you can just use this effect and just like get rid of another card. So yeah, this card is really good. In fact, it says that the fact that the trigger effect for the graveyard is whenever it's sent means that there's a future where you can mix this with the Dogmatica engine and just use Dogmaticas as like board breaking strategies besides like Elder Entity Entis by just sending these Fiendsmith monsters. So now that we talked about Fiendsmith in general and we talked about all the cards, let's go back to Fabled. Uh, for those who don't know, Fabled was a very strong synchro strategy back in 2011. They comprised between fiend monsters and beast monsters, but they were all light attribute, and they have really good synchro monsters. Like Raging can be like a card that you would summon to just draw cards, and the way the Fable strategy worked is that you would draw into more of your Fables, you would discard them, and then you would synchro loop into this card to keep drawing more cards and just like filling up your board. Uh, you have the Leviathan, which essentially this card can recycle a lot of fiend monsters, and it had like in it synergy with other cards. You have Andrath, which is a really cool one. It basically either punishes your opponent for from stopping you from like doing that graceful charity effect, or you gain the graceful charity effect, which is already strong in a deck that revolved around discarding cards. But yeah, essentially, Fabled is like the first thing that came into mind when it came to like this archetype. The second theme that I think a lot of people already thought about is Magical Musketeers. So the Musket monsters. Musketeers is a really cool deck because it is a one card engine deck. However, one natural weakness that Musketeers had is the same weakness Runic has, and is the fact that it revolved around playing a lot of your engine cards, which means that you were naturally prone to breaking uh, with this archetype. Another issue with this deck is that their best card, which is Musketeer Max, is essentially a card that works better going second than going first. Meaning that this strategy had no real good strategies if they ever ended up going first. And going second, this card is a liability because we're in a format where a lot of interruptions are present, and if you don't play like enough board breaking cards, or if your musketeer cards are not enough to just start contesting with the board, then you're not pretty much getting anywhere. But now, because of the existence of Fiendsmith, now Magical Musketeer can become a link climbing strategy. You can now like do a lot of crazy plays besides just Max. And if you end up going second, you can just summon the Musketeer Max and just like really start picking up the steam against your opponent. So now that I talked about muskets, what other themes can we like play with this engine? I There's a lot of them like off the top of my head that I can think of. Like for example, Detractus is a very generic searcher for like fiends, so you can add stuff like Santa Claus. You can add stuff like Majesty Fiend. You can add stuff like a Dusted Gold, Archfiend Eccentric. Astro Karibo is another really good one. Just to give you like examples. But yeah, uh, that is something really cool that we can do. Tierra, the source of destruction, was not really a searchable monster, except with one other card, which I don't remember the name of the top of my head. But now it is now more searchable. You have a searcher for Spiral Sleeper and Spiral Double Agent as well. In the off chance that you want to like mix this with spirals, not saying that you should, but you know the ideology is there. I already brought up how Sequentia can special summon any Fiend Fusion monster. So there's a world where you can just mix it with Dark Worlds. Uh, Evil Hero at Dusted Gold is a light fiend, so it kind of goes in hand with the theme of Tractus, and it can also be used as a fusion material for Tractus or Sequentia, meaning that you can actually summon Malicious Bane by using a Dusted Gold plus Fiendsmith. And this is a really strong card. Uh, but yeah, you have the ability to summon Bird from it as well. Uh, and now you're seeing these three monsters right here. You're seeing Yama, you're seeing High King Caesar, and you're seeing Beatrice. This is one of the scariest parts about this deck. What if I told you there's a one card combo that can get you to these? I guess it's time to demonstrate, right? So we're just gonna reset everything. And let's see if we draw it. We don't open the Fiendsmith. We need the Fiendsmith for this combo. I'm just gonna show you the one card combo with Fiendsmith, and then we can talk about like a lot of other things that we can do. So these are the top of our decks. So we're going to do the Fiendsmith combo. So basically, we dump Fiendsmith, and with Fiendsmith, we're going to add specifically the Sanctus. We're going to use Sanctus effect. Sanctus is going to special summon a token because we control no monsters. We're going to link away this token into Fiendsmith Requiem. We're going to use Requiem's effect, and Requiem is going to special summon another copy of Fiendsmith. And now we can use the Fiendsmith in our graveyard, putting Requiem back into the extra deck, and re-summon this Fiendsmith. And these are two level 6 light fiend monsters. You can make High King Caesar with these. You can make Beatrice with these. Or you can make Unchained Lord of Yama with these. And Lord of Yama is really strong because it accesses you to your your Unchained engine. And you already know that some Unchains are level 6, meaning that they can pair up with Fiendsmith to just make the aforementioned XYZ monsters if you already have other extenders. This is really scary to think because Fiend monsters are already like getting a lot of support, be it with Nightmare Throne, Jubel support, Unchained support, like the Labyrinth monsters are all fiends, so there's natural synergy with those cards as well. And now this is just another archetype that just synergizes well with fiend monsters. Noted it's more based on light fiends than regular fiends, but I still digress. And this is just a combo with Fiendsmith. Just imagine how crazy the deck can be if you like open, for example, Tractus, and you have Tractus alongside like another fiend monster or like another card to discard, because it doesn't have to discard a light fiend monster, it can discard anything. And it discards at resolution, not as a cost. So it triggers Dark World, it triggers Chadols, it triggers like the dangers. It triggers a lot of engines that you can play. And like this card is also really really scary because if you have an extender alongside Fiendsmith, instead of just summoning Yama, you can summon Sequentia. Sequentia can summon the Lacrimosa. Lacrimosa can resummon the Fiendsmith, and then Lacrimosa and Fiendsmith can become any of these two. And essentially, you have a link to Fiend monster alongside this. And it can get even crazier because again, you're not locked into anything, so you can just summon link threes, link fours, link fives. Uh, if I'm not mistaken, Underworld Goddess is a light fiend monster, so it also benefits from this engine as well. But yeah, this is a very very scary archetype, uh, and for those who don't know, Infinite Forbidden uh, is already has a TCG confirmation date, which is July 17th, and our TCG Nationals in North America is on July 19th, meaning that there is a world where this archetype is legal for our national season. And knowing Konami and knowing business practices, there's a really strong chance that Snake Eye got hit to some level or some degree by the time this archetype comes out. So I really highly recommend for you to look into these cards. I really highly recommend you start practicing with these because this could be uh, a really strong tier one contender someday. Uh, if not this, then fiends in general. But yeah, that has been it from me. I hope you found this informative to your liking and understanding. As always, keep practicing and keep doing.